Before beginning, I would like to request the cooperation of all participants on a few matters. Kindly keep your microphones muted throughout the entire webinar except for the interactive session where you can raise your doubts by unmuting your microphones. Towards the end of the webinar, we'll be providing you with a feedback form link. Kindly fill the form to obtain the e-certificates. Now I'll be announcing the program schedule. We'll be starting off with a prayer, followed by the welcoming address, the presidential address, the introduction of the resource person, the main session. Towards the end, we will have an interaction and it will conclude with the vote of thanks. Hope it is clear. Honorable resource person, respected principal, vice principal, teachers, scholars, students, and all those who have joined us today for the webinar, wishing one and all of you a very pleasant evening. The Department of Psychology was established at Prajyoti Niketan College in the year 1995. It is a leading research center recognized by the University of Calicut, pioneering in the field of clinical psychology. The department offers the programs of BSc Psychology, MSc Clinical Psychology, and PhD programs. The department is also affiliated to many social institutes and non-governmental organizations and comprises of faculties who are experienced in both clinical and academic side of psychology. Today, the Research and Postgraduate Department of Psychology is hosting a national webinar on understanding contemporary research methods in cognitive science, and we are lucky enough to have a well noteworthy and deserving speaker as a resource person for today. We shall commence the webinar by seeking the blessings of God Almighty. To guide us in prayer, I welcome Ms. Radhika TH of 3rd BSc Psychology.
കാണായ ലോകങ്ങൾ കാക്കുന്ന ദേവാ കാരുണ്യ സിന്ധോ നമിക്കുന്നു ഞങ്ങൾ കരളിന്റെ പൂക്കൾ നിൻ പാദതാരിൽ കാണിക്ക വച്ചു നമിക്കുന്നു ഞങ്ങൾ ലോകാ സമസ്ത സുഖിനോ ഭവന്തു ഈ മന്ത്രമെങ്ങും മുഴങ്ങുന്ന നേരം വിജ്ഞാനദീപം നിറകതിർത്തോകാൻ നേരിന്റെ പാത നയിക്കേണി ദേവ കാണായ ലോകങ്ങൾ കാക്കുന്ന ദേവ കാരുണ്യ സിന്ധോ നമിക്കുന്നു ഞങ്ങൾ.
Thank you, Radhika. Dr. Milu Maria Anto Ma'am, the head of the Department of Psychology, is well known for her excellence in teaching, mentoring students, and leading the Department of Psychology through both academic and community-oriented programs. I happily welcome Dr. Milu Maria Anto Ma'am for the welcoming address.
Thank you, Hannah. Good afternoon and Eid Mubarak. Respected Founder Manager, Reverend Dr. Harshajan Parayatil, Principal Dr. Binu P. Chako, Vice Principal Dr. Simi Verghese, Resource Person Ms. Crystal Lewis, delegates, my colleagues, and dear students. Postgraduate and Research Department of Psychology, Prajyoti Niketan, has always been sensitive to public mental health needs and organized webinars and programs periodically. This webinar is specially focusing on research methods in cognitive science. Cognitive science and related research is a rapidly growing area and less explored in the academic settings. Hope the webinar will provide much insight into this area. My entrusted duty is to welcome everyone. First, I welcome our founder manager, Reverend Dr. Harshajan Parayatil, who is the guiding star of Prajyoti Niketan College. In his absence, I welcome him to this gathering. Dr. Binu P. Chako, Principal, Prajyoti Niketan, is a scholar and motivator. Sir, on behalf of Department of Psychology and those who gathered in the virtual platform, I welcome you to this webinar. Dr. Simi Verghese, our Vice Principal, has always been a supporter for all the academic activities. I welcome Dr. Simi Burgess to this gathering. Dr. Jaya A.T., the organizing secretary of this webinar, was really successful in coordinating the webinar. Her sincere efforts is worth mentioning. On behalf of all who gathered here, I extend her warm welcome. Today's resource person, Ms. Crystal Lewis, who is going to deal with the topic Contemporary Research Methods in Cognitive Science. I proudly remember her as alumnus of our department, an enthusiastic student, and a versatile singer. Currently, she is Junior Research Fellow, Center for Creative Cognitive. I'm sure that this session will be a fruitful one with her own touch. On behalf of Prajyoti Niketan College and those who gathered here, I welcome Ms. Crystal to the gathering.
Thank you.
Hearty welcome all the delegates, faculty and students from various institutes and all the faculty members and students of Prajyoti Niketan. Especially, I welcome all faculty members and students of Department of Psychology who made this event possible. Once again, I welcome all of you. Have a fruitful and knowledgeable session ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your warm and welcoming words. Our newly appointed principal, Dr. Binu P. Chako, sir, is well known by setting an exemplary path for both teachers and students through his academic standards and innovative methods. He is presiding over our today's webinar, and I happily welcome Dr. Binu P. Chako, sir, for the presidential address.
Respected chief guest of this webinar is Crystal Maria Louise, head of the department, Dr. Milu, organizing secretary, Dr. Jaya, delegates, my colleagues and students. So today we are attending a research level program conducted by the research department. Now we will discuss about a much relevant topic in this seminar, that is cognitive science. On this occasion, we are fortunate to get one of our alumni as our chief guest. I am thankful to Ms. Crystal for spending her valuable time with the young generations in psychology. As far as my knowledge, cognitive science is the scientific study of human mind and its processes like knowing, understanding, and learning. It is related with many fields. It adopts ideas and methods from psychology, computer science, philosophy, then linguistics, and neuroscience. The goal of cognitive science is to characterize the nature of human knowledge, how the knowledge is used, how it is processed, and how it is acquired. Now, the cognitive scientist will study about the intelligence and the behavior of human beings. Now, what I can relate cognitive science is with the computer science. In the computer science, there is an area known as artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence is used with the cognitive science, and it can produce some useful results. Artificial intelligence can have two purposes: the use of computers or its power to augment human thinking, and the other one is how humans think. When we solve a problem using computers, we know that what they can accomplish. If we include the case of how they can accomplish it, then the computers are doing cognitive science. That is, using artificial intelligence to understand the human mind. Here, artificial intelligence deals with the cognitive functions such as learning and problem solving. This cognitive science and artificial intelligence have a lot of applications in real life. I like to mention some of them. Artificial intelligence will be using cognitive science to understand humans better. Educational institutions adopt technology to teach better, and they could use artificial intelligence effectively if it understands the needs of the students better. Any field that interact with the humans will need to have an understanding of the mental and emotional processes in human beings. Banking and marketing professionals providing automated services would need to have an understanding of the human mind and how to appeal to them. I think there will be a fruitful discussion on different aspects of cognitive science in this webinar. And I congratulate the organizers of this webinar, especially Dr. Milu Maria, HOD, and Dr. Jaya, organizing secretary of this webinar. And I wish this session will be a fruitful one for all the delegates. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your encouraging and insightful words. Now, let me take this opportunity to introduce to all of you our resource person, Ms. Crystal Maria Lewis, ma'am. She is currently working as a junior research fellow at SR College of Engineering, Warangal University, and she has been a part of numerous projects there, projects investigating areas such as effects of social advertisement on attitude change. She also recently worked in launching a website for collecting data amid the COVID-19 restrictions. She has also worked there as a teaching assistant, student mentor. She is also a freelance artist. She has been working as she had worked as an intern at Allahabad Center for Child Development and Socio-Emotional Department at Mumbai. She did her BSc Psychology from Prajyoti Niketan College and her MSc in Cognitive Science at Center for Behavioral and Cognitive Sciences, Allahabad University. She is currently pursuing her PhD program and is about to start working as an R&D officer at JP Enemy Private Limited the next month. She has also authored numerous papers and has gone for numerous paper presentations. She has attended seminars and conferences as well. So we are very proud and glad to have with us a resourceful person indeed with a lot of skills and expertise in the field of cognitive science. So I would like to gladly welcome our resource person, Ms. Crystal Maria Lewis, ma'am, for the main session.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Now, I suppose I'm supposed to talk right now. Diana?
Yes, Crystal.
Yeah, I feel very humbled that I'm invited over here. I mean, hearing all of y'all talk, I wish this was in the college so I could come see y'all all in person. Prajyoti is like my second home. I was very happy when Jaya ma'am reached out to me and asked me to do a webinar. Even though it's an invited talk, it goes in my CV. More than that, I was just excited that I was able to contribute to my alma mater, which is a very important reason because, reason that I am who I am right now. Samya ma'am, Milu ma'am, Nice ma'am, Jia ma'am, all the teachers are like my second mom. I'm just so proud of them. And I'm really glad to come back and provide such information. I went on a journey and I'm back. I thank Pinu sir for giving a gist of what cognitive science is. It's just actually made my work so much more easier. I was wondering how exactly to talk about a very vast area in just like 45 minutes to 1 hour. Since it's a very interdisciplinary field, it covers a lot, and I can go on for hours and days talking about it, and I still wouldn't be able to finish. But Pinu sir did a wonderful job introducing the topic, so I'll just stick with the methods of research in cognitive science. I also thank Hannah. Hannah, I hope I got your name. Hannah, yeah. Hannah, I thank you for your introduction of me. When someone says something like that, I think I'm some great person now, but not really. Okay, I'm also still learning. I'm all like just like y'all. Every time I learn something, it's like after you go from bachelor's, you go to master's, you unlearn everything, you relearn everything. So the journey is a constant process of learning, and I was very privileged to be guided by a lot of learned people. I was guided by Jia ma'am, especially, was the first guide. And because of that, I fell in love with research and pursuing research as a career. It's become like an art form for me, and I love art and I love research so much, and I'm glad to share that with everyone here. So without further ado, I will start my talk. Gemma? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll be sharing my screen.
Yes.
It's a little PowerPoint presentation, just a little something to help me along, but most of that will be just me talking. And we'll have, if you have any questions, do stop me in between. If I'm too loud, if I'm too fast, also I have that problem. Gianna especially told me, Crystal, don't speak too fast. So if I'm too fast, you can just let me know. Okay, I don't mind being interrupted, and we can keep all the questions. Hopefully we'll have a good discussion towards the end. And so, without further ado, I will start. Yes. Is this? Is it visible? Is my it?
Yes. It's visible.
Yeah. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So. So I'll be talking about my topic of today. Topic of my talk today is contemporary research methods in cognitive science. And like Binu sir said, cognitive science is a interdisciplinary field. So since it takes from a lot of fields, it also the methods also are taken from different kinds of fields. So we are trying to understand cognition. Cognition is anything that goes inside in your mind. It can be very primitive, like perception or attention, to something very complex like planning, decision making, even ethics, morality, aesthetics, perception of art, all of that, even emotions, in fact. So that is why it's called cognitive science, because it is a field that mostly wants to study. One of the key goals is to study the mind from different perspectives in a very scientific way, using scientific technologies and tools. So there are different research methods, but before that, let's understand what is cognition and what is a cognitive revolution. The origin of cognitive science is since time immemorial, when Aristotle and Plato started thinking about what are the contents of the mind. Like, who am I? Who is a person? Why am I able to think? And all that. So the talk about existence and the talk about the mind and the brain and the body was actually very interrelated. And if you want, like all of philosophy, if you go back in time, all of philosophy actually always has some dialogue about the mind. If you are interested to read more about it, you can check out this book. It's called Sophie's World. It's a little child learning about philosophy from her grandfather. So while I was going through this, I realized, there's a lot about the mind, and there is a field of study or in philosophy itself. It's called philosophy of mind, where people ask questions about what is the mind and so on and so forth. What are the contents of the mind? How does the mind function? And there are different thought experiments in philosophy that help us understand how the mind works. But all of these debates and discussions were sort of arrested during the 18th century, when we had the school of behaviorism that dominated the field of psychology. So B.F. Skinner was like psychological examinations should strictly be based on observed stimulus and observed behavioral response. There's nothing in between. It's a habitual learned process. You show something and the organism responds in a particular way. So that is what was considered as behaviorism, and talks about the mind, about the consciousness, about things mental, in fact, or etc., was banished from formal platforms and respected scientific platforms and discussions. So all of this, even though there were philosophers, even though there were people talking about it, like writing articles and letters, they were all very shushed and in the background, sort of like that. And later on, like almost in the 1950s, a lot of that's when the functionalistic perspective sort of started taking control. So if behaviorism is like, you have a response, you have a stimulus and you have a response, that is how is behavior. Functionalism was another school of psychology that studied what the function of the mind, what is the function of the mind. So most of the people who started the cognitive revolution were actually functionalists. So a functionalist, when I think of a functionalist, a functionalist will say that if something does a function, it qualifies for it. For example, if a mind can calculate, it can do calculations, it can store, it can read out things, and a computer can also do that, then the computer also has a mind. So that's where the dialogue actually started for what is happening inside the mind. So that's when, after functionalism, the cognitive revolution sort of started. I'll talk about one book which is very interesting. It's called Vehicles. When you think like, it's basically, functionalism was like, if a rat trap, it's a very simple rat trap, catches a rat, and a very sophisticated rat trap also catches a rat, both of them perform the same functions. So if someone from the outside who cannot see what all are inside these rat traps will just say the rat traps are catching the rat. That's what functionalists started saying. A human can also think, computer can also think, so that means human has a mind, computer has a mind. So all of these dialogues is what led to led to formation of the field of artificial intelligence also. Now, the book Vehicles is something few of y'all, if y'all are interested, should read it. It's basically it's a small vehicle. If you look at this figure over here, this is the book, okay? And this figure over here, it says that these are sensors, and the vehicle just has two parts, a sensor and a wheel. So these sensors are like, it's aversive to light. So if these are aversive to light, whenever it comes near a light source, it sort of moves away, okay? But if the function is crisscross, like if the motors are crisscross, this one is getting stimulated and it's saying, we should increase function. So it's this one's the magnitude increases for the right motor as well as for the left motor, making it turn. So when someone from outside sees these simple vehicles with just two tools performing in such a way, they say that, okay, you know what, I think this vehicle has hate, it is curious because it's coming very fast, it's going very slowly. It's all based on these little connections with just these two tools. But the brain has so much more, and so the book Vehicle has about 23 to 25 chapters. Each chapter, the vehicle becomes more complicated, and you can see that the functions that this vehicle performs is very akin to behavior itself. So you'll ask yourself, what is the contents of the mind? Is this how the brain is? So that those dialogues are what inspired people to come together and form the Cognitive Science Society. So we had many people, not just people who were talking about just functionalism. We had behaviorists, we have linguistics, we had Noam Chomsky also over there, and 6 pillars especially. The debate actually started when George Miller came out and said, back in 1956, he said that thinking is limited. The memory storage is limited, and he wrote an article called The Magic Number 7. And after that, Ebinger started doing research on forgetting. And this is sometime around the same time as when computers also started being developed. So we had primitive computers also. So some pioneers in the field like John McCarthy, Alan Ewell, Simon Herbert, they came together for this seminar in cognitive sciences, for the Cognitive Science Society, first seminar, and they proposed the field of artificial intelligence. The field of artificial intelligence is very important to cognitive science because you can sort of use the computer and the brain as analogous to each other, as in you can understand the brain using a computer, and you can understand the computer using a brain. It's sort of like, it's like a give and take relationship. So AI sort of branched out because of cognitive science. And then Noam Chomsky started rejecting behaviorism by saying that behavior, especially language, is not something that is learned by habit, but it has the comprehension of language has certain grammatical rules, and that's how things are. And there is actually something going on inside the brain, and we should look into it. So that's when people started thinking about, what we should actually think about all these functions like thinking, learning, language, behavior, social, cultural, otherwise. That is very tied down to what is going on inside the mind, or what are the functions of the mind. So that is how the cognitive rev did. So the key goals of this cognitive science is to study is to study behavior in sense, or psychology, or the mind, or the brain in a very scientific way. And even now feels like study of emotion and study of art get a lot of critical reviews from humanitarian socialists who tell that these things should not be studied as a science. But there are underlying processes that is neural or otherwise is actually going on, and they can be studied as a science, which is why cognitive science plays a huge role. So even though we take it in a very general way, even though cognitive science has sort of been there for many years, for many decades now, it's not in the limelight, it's sort of in the background. It has actually helped a lot of other technologies evolve, but research right now in the academic field is slowly starting to come in the limelight very recently, especially in India. So by about 1970s, it surpassed behaviorism and it started having more research articles being published. And by about 1980s, it became a dominant line of research inquiry where people actually thought of or considered these rule of thumbs of cognitive science experiments and conducted their research, even in psychology. So yeah, so cognitive science, like Principal has spoken, is an integrated field. So we do derive all these questions from philosophy. There are these theories from psychology. There are analogous models from artificial intelligence, and then we have a structural sort of a support from neuroscience, and also anthropology, which tells us how anthropology is also, tells us how human beings are, like what made human, what is it all about human beings. So there are 4 types of anthropology studies: cultural, biological, archaeology, and one more, which I'm not getting the name right now. Anyway, so and linguistics. So linguistics, even though language has a lot on thought as much as thought has on language. For example, there is, if you look at cultural studies with language and thinking also can tell us a lot about why linguistics plays a huge role in understanding the mind, because there is a tribe if you go to the so if you go to the north, the Eskimos, they have 50 different words for snow. There are new snow, there is old snow, there is snow with fractals, snow that's fallen, snow on the topmost layer. And because they have these words, their perception is also being changed, or it is being tuned to identify certain different types of snow. Also emotions in a way, like Greek and Latin and Russia and Germany, German language, they have different words that we don't have in English. And because of these words, they can express themselves in a different way than we can in English. So linguistics do play a huge role on how we perceive the world. So these 6 pillars are very important, and they contribute a lot to understanding the human mind. And it is through these 6 pillars that we understand. That contribute to cognitive science. So when you think about 6 pillars, there are a lot of other pillars that contribute to these pillars also. So people, they can spend an entire lifetime just taking one pillar and studying one factor, maybe just like spatial relations in an evolutionary perspective, or spatial relations in using the chaos theory or something like that. They spend their entire life, because that's how much we don't know about the human mind. People say that we are the final frontier. The human mind is the last and the final frontier that man has yet to explore. We have gone to space, we have gone underwater, but we still don't know what's happening inside our minds, what's happening in between. And a lot of people still need to keep, and we do need a lot of researchers to keep asking these questions and searching answers in whatever interests them. So yeah. So now back to what I'm supposed to talk about. Since we are an integrated field, computer science integrated field, there are traditional experimental methods. One thing I forgot to say is, since it's an integrated field, it's basically an intellectual cohesion and collaboration between these pillars that would otherwise be very distinct in nature. So you bring together all of these fields, and you learn a little bit from each and everything. So there are traditional experimental methods from neuroscience that you can study with computer science, that you can study with anthropology, that you can study with psychological theories. So you put together all of these experimental methods, and there are those methods of studying the mind. Then there are cognitive neuroscientific methods or studies where you use certain kinds of neuroscientific tools, like you use the EEG, you use fMRI, you can use the PET scans, you can use Pms studies, and all those. Then a very popular method, especially used in the medical field to understand the mind, is understand the workings of the brain, if we go in a very medical term, is a cognitive neuropsychological investigation of children and adults with brain injury. So let me start with brain injuries. So people with lesions, people with strokes, people with brain injury, so their behavior, their personality, their functions, their span of attention, their memory before the incident and after the incident can help us understand what structures, how that, if a part of their brain is not working, how does the brain sort of compensate for it? What all functions are lost? So when you know that a particular structure is responsible for a certain function, when that structure is not there, how does that affect behavior? And then we have children and adults with developmental and degenerative disabilities, which does contribute a lot. Learn with, if you take children with, people with degenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, as their brain sort of degrades or degenerates, you see them losing a lot of cognitive and physical functions. And this sort of helps you correlate on what structures or what functions or what part of the brain is used or is associated with that particular function of the mind. And another very popular methodology, which is used in a lot of fields in everywhere actually, be it marine science or rocket science, is computational modeling. So computational modeling is when you get data from anything, be it genetic data or the amount of fishes in a particular pond, or how or anything, any kind of data. You put certain parameters analogous to how this data is behaving in the natural environment, and you trial and test it, and you simulate it to get a larger sort of data pool, and you can build models out of it with statistics. So this will help you understand the mind a little more I mean, at least in cognitive science, a little more in detail. So even cognitive science has computational modelers who employ computational modeling in their research. That is a can of worms for me. So that's something I never tried to open. I just, touch it. I don't understand it. I'm like, okay, that's part and parcel of our research. Ideally, it's all supposed to go hand in hand. That is what that is the goal of cognitive science. So a very important part about cognitive science and the study of cognitive science, especially research in cognitive science, is with psychophysics. I think by third year, if you all are all psychology students, you know what psychophysics is. But if there are other audience over here, I will explain what psychophysics is. Many of the scientific advancements started with the World War. And psychophysics was very important in that, and that's where it all started with. It was started by, it was introduced by philosopher Gustav Theodor Fischer and later on by Mr. Weber. And they had a Fisher-Weber law and everything. So psychophysics is basically, you have a particular, the environmental stimulus, and how does this stimulus sort of affect a response? Like if there's a diagram that I've put down. So the bulb over here, it's being lit with an increased level of intensity of light, and it keeps increasing, and the participant is asked to identify when they can actually see the light. Okay, so at that point, the person is supposed to say, I saw the light, even though the light was present before they observed it. So that intensity, so this intensity was not, they were not able to perceive that intensity, but they were able to perceive this. So this threshold is, it's like that threshold is an absolute threshold. And after that, they can sort of increase it. So we have a Weber's curve, or a psychophysics curve. It's a very popular curve in the area of psychophysics, and even in psychology now, because we use psychophysics for almost all studies, where as the stimulus intensity increases, your perception also increases in a certain ratio. So that is what is how psychophysics is aiding to research in psychology. And why I'm introducing this term is because extensively that is being used even in behavioral data collection. So how we collect data right now is a very important thing about experiments. No matter what you do, always ask for consent, always make sure that your data is ethical. Always make sure that your research is ethical. We can't ask anyone to do anything. It should be ethical. And for us, for someone who is like, I can call myself a mature experimenter, almost-ish. I, as an experimenter, I've seen about thousands of participants, and you have to beg them and ask them to make sure that they're fine to do your experiment. So for us experimenters, our participants are our God. Okay, so we should make sure that our experiments are very ethical and it's not too complicated for them. Speaking about complicated experiments, we always I'll come to that. So we have questionnaires like usual, and we have interviews, making sure to ask whether through these questions you make sure that the person is fit to do your experiment, and you observe certain things. So every conversation is like a certain, you have an experimenting eye. And you have computer experiments, which is most commonly used in cognitive science to collect behavioral data. You can do computer experiments in a dark room. Usually we have a dark room, a dimly lit room. We place the computer in front of the participant. The participant is not disturbed, and we have a particular stimulus that's shown to them. The stimulus is what they are supposed to observe. The stimulus should be very simple, using the principles of parsimony, because if the stimulus is very complicated, you're calling in more complicated functions into play. So, you're supposed to remove all of those variables out of the picture and use a very simple stimulus. So we have a simple stimulus, and in the screen, we get their attention, and they do the experiment trial after trial, like about 200 trials. The experiment lasts for about 10 to 15 minutes. They get enough breaks. They get, even they are monetarily compensated for that. Another way that we also conduct experiments is using visual realities, VR. it creates a little, it's for a little more, it's especially to learn spatial relations and all that. We use VR technology. And there are people who have actually done these studies. Even during the master's level, we start getting trained to do research like this. So on the left, on the right hand side of the page, you would see an experiment. It's like it's a timeline of an experiment. It's a trial structure. So we consider each box as something that is appearing on the screen. So the person is shown a variation of all these. So this experiment that I'm going to explain is called the RSVP, or random serial visual presentation. It's very commonly used to study a lot of, especially attention, a lot of cognitive functions, especially attention, as I mentioned. The first time it was used was in the attention blink experiment. And if you have heard of the bottleneck model of attention, those were all understood using experiments such as these. So I'm going to a very primitive example of a computer experiment. So how it proceeds is basically, let's just imagine we have this, if you can follow the mouse over here. At first, it will be just a blank screen with a fixation cross. It's in the middle, in the center, there will be one cross, and the subject is asked to focus on that cross, which means that we are calling to attention to that cross. After a while, there will be a random presentation of numbers, serial presentation. So each of which will be shown for just 100 milliseconds, very small, S, W, G, Z, T, all of that. And we'll ask the participant to, that among all of these letters, there will be one letter that will stand out, and that's a target letter. Okay, so target letter will be of a different color, usually green or red, and that will be the target letter. Another question we ask the participant before the experiment altogether is if they are able to identify another target called X. So you can see X over here. So this X can appear right immediately after the target, T1, first target, before the target, or maybe after 2-3 other distractors, you have a target. So the experiment contains 2 targets, which is one in red, one is the X, and many distractors. So distractors are things that they don't really have to focus on. So you sort of like, and this shows very fast, like you can barely see it. And if you notice X, you have to report that you notice X. And sometimes on some trials, so there will be different sorts of trials. There'll be some trials where they will be only asked, so it'll be a set like single task trials. And then in some of the trials, like in between, you will have dual task trials where they'll be asked 2 questions. They'll be asked that, was the target a vowel or was it a consonant? And first they have to answer that, and then they'll ask, did you see X? So if you look at the graph over here, there, depending on the time lag is from the target for T1 and T2, how far apart is T1 and T2, this determines their performance. So if it is very close, performance is good. Okay, so it's like, it sort of like slips in to the attention gate. And then we have immediately after, it sort of gets washed away with the distractors. And then if it's towards the end, again, performance is quite good. So that is especially in dual tasks. So this is how we analyze data. This is how we then come up with tasks like, maybe the attention gap, when the target is shown, attention is peaked. So we have a attention gate opening over there. And there is only a short gap after which, during which if a distractor can get in or not. So we can understand the timing of the gates of attention. So even though this experiment is very simple, it explains a lot of things. That is why we use the principle of parsimony. So making experiments very simple, very discrete, but you are able to explain a lot based on that. So that is how it's done. So we have about 200 to 300 trials. Each trial will last for about 2 to 3 seconds, and the entire experiment for about 10 minutes. So we, tell them this is all that's going to be, we give them instructions, give them a trial session, and then make them sit and do the behavioral experiment. So this is how we collect behavioral data. So first, first point in research is you ask a question, you code the question the way you want it, you design your experiment, and these experiments can be designed or can be coded. Like you can use MATLAB, which many labs use. In MATLAB, you can use something called Psych Toolbox. Psych Toolbox helps you build experiments like these. Or you can also use Python, you can use C++, Java, all that. Or you can also use certain kinds of game building, experiment builders. So these are already like, I think Python has one called Open Sesame. So in Open Sesame, you can just drag and drop it and just say, okay, I want this to be shown for 10 seconds or 10 milliseconds, and that will be shown like that. So you build without coding itself, you can sort of build your experiments using these platforms. And that's a very fun part, it's sort of very repetitive, everything sorts of falls into place. It's a nice part to collect data. After this, you go out into the open and you look for participants, and then you collect data. And then you analyze data. You analyze data using, like if you've studied statistics, then most often you use the t-test or the z-test. You need about 30 participants using the CLT theory, where you get almost a normal distribution. So we have outliers or people who just performed it based on chance level. So you get normal behavior of what your question is trying to answer. And I hope I'm not too fast. I hope we're all on the same page. Are we still on the same page? Are you all able to follow, or should I slow down? Anyone? Does anyone have any doubts so far? Do I have to slow down for something? Okay, since I'm not getting any response, it's because I'm out of time and able to follow. Awesome. So you're sort of like, what was I saying? So you make these experiments very easy to understand and very easy to do. And I lost my flow of thought. It doesn't matter. I don't remember where I stopped. Yeah, so many experiments similar to this can be built. Like it can be a search task. It can be something like attention blink. This is an attention. So it can be a search task. It can be something like just looking at certain places or anything like that. So this is how we collect behavioral data. You can also use other kinds of tools to collect behavioral data, and this is some of the examples of the tools that we use. This is an eye tracking. You can use eye tracking studies. Like I mentioned, you can also use different kinds of tools to study these data. Now, so down below, before I go into eye tracking studies, you can use the eyes. The eyes are like the portals to the soul, they say. No, it's very true, because there are a lot of visual studies. And an eye tracker has been a boon for cognitive science to understand a lot of things. Eye tracking, or the movement of the eye, is of two types: smooth pursuits and saccades. So smooth pursuits is if I'm moving my hand like this, my eye is pursuing the movement of my hand. Okay, so that is a smooth pursuit. When you see a car going, your eyes follow the car, right? So that is a smooth pursuit. So there are studies using smooth pursuit. And there are saccades. Saccades are when you're searching for something in a crowd or in a table. You're looking from one point to another point to another point to another point. So you're making quick eye movements. These are called saccades. Saccades last for about 220 milliseconds, so very fast. A lot of studies use saccade studies also are there for using eye tracker. Then there is pupil dilation. So pupil dilation is especially used for learning emotions, it's used in the advertisement industry and all that, especially to understand. So when you look at someone you love or something you like, your eyes dilate, or when you're really scared, your eyes dilate. So things like that, you can sort of study these dilations of the pupil also using these eye tracking machines. So before I go into the rest of it, I have two images shown over here. One image is the eye tracker itself. So how the eye tracker works is it's an infrared light. So people even use it for gaming and all right now. You sort of mount it. There are two types. There's a desk mounted one and also a head mounted one. So a desk mounted one would be just there. And if you follow my mouse, you can see a chin rest. You can see a chin rest. So this is like the distance between the eye tracker and the person's eye is calculated, as well as the height. And this angle over here is calculated. So you sort of you calibrate the eyes to the eye tracker, and when the eyes move, the computer knows that the eyes are moving. So using this, people go do heat map studies. Like they ask people to walk around a grocery store or watch a website, and where all are people actually looking at. So you sort of have gaze points and trajectories of the eyes, and this helps you make heat maps. So this is why if you haven't noticed, if you watch Hotstar or Hotstar. Yeah, if you watch Hotstar, the ads or go into premium ads will be at the bottom left corner, because our eyes are more likely to go to the left corner of the screen even when we are not knowing. So this sort of helps in priming. I'm not going into what priming is. I'm pretty sure all of you all know what priming is. So it sort of primes you into taking a premium account. Okay, so that's why heat maps are very important in studying how you sort of arrange your website and all that. Another way heat maps also work is it helps you understand where the person is looking at, so to get extreme attention towards. So another thing is, maybe it's true because we all look at the left side, but let's imagine a Japanese speaker or an Arabic speaker. The way they read is from right to left. So maybe their eyes would go to the right? So that could be a question. So we can have opposing studies like that also. So maybe a Hotstar in the UAE would have a different kind of primer in the right side. So it's still a question, because you can understand based on, again, language and habits of reading and all that, certain things develop over time. So down below is so my master's thesis was on I used eye tracking, and I tried to study saccadic chronostasis, that is time perception with eye movement, and I used an eye tracker for that, and that was my lab over there. I spent almost 2 years there. Half the time, after my classes, we had 2 hours of classes, and then we used to sit in that lab, often in the dark, because we have to conduct experiments in the dark. I'll show you a video of how I used to conduct the experiments. So I used to sit here, experimenter used to sit here, and the participant used to sit here. Okay, so this computer and this computer are in sync. So the experiment will be running in this computer as well as on this computer. The subject will press correct response or wrong responses. So that is connected to the computer. And then the eye tracker is also calibrated. I mean, their eyes are calibrated with an eye tracker that is kept over here. And you can view the eye tracker you can view the eyes over here and change the eye. Twerk the position of the eye tracker in this computer. So that's how the experimental setup was. And all of these was connected to each other using a software called ePrime. So ePrime is a programming software, and it was very convenient to sort of work like this. I'll show you a video of how it worked. Is this? Yeah. Can you all see this video?
Yes.
Okay, so this is how the experiment started. This is a video I found today morning. I was looking for one. This is a video from 2 years ago when I was doing my experiment. Something was wrong with the eye tracker, so I just took a video to show my professor. So we have 2 lines, and the center over here is the participant's pupil. I'm watching it at the screen. The participant is sitting right behind. I'm sitting right behind the participant, and we sort of calibrate in such a way that these two lines, these four lines are clear in the center. This white line should be dead center and shouldn't be wavering. And when it is in dead center, you sort of tell the participant to look at the center of the screen. You have 9 dots like this, and you ask the participant to look at 9 dots. And when the person is looking at the dead center, you tell the computer the person is looking at dead center. So the computer sort of adjusts and says that, okay, now we understand based on the coordinates. And when a person looks here and there, because these computers, especially CRT monitors, have a refresh rate of about 16 hertz per second. So they can, even if you move a little inch in even like 220 milliseconds, they can read where the eyes are going very fast. So that's how these eye trackers sort of catch the eyes, and this is how we calibrate the eyes. The calibration took about 10 minutes in itself. It was very exciting. I just wanted to show you all this. The participant is sitting right over here, and this is where I can see the person's eye, and this is how I adjust it. So that is.
Move your eyes, keep looking at the center.
And we do it in a dark room. So that is how I conducted. 1 second. So that's how I conducted my master's thesis with an eye tracker. And you can also use it in other studies where you sort of learn, how you place the words and all to decrease cognitive load and all that. So here, if you can read it, the red-brown fox, even though it's a very small, change that has been brought, it decreases cognitive load by about 50%. So eye tracking helps you sort of align things in certain ways to help your websites look a little more attractive, to make tasks a little more interesting, all that. And yeah. So another tool that we use is the EEG tool. I don't have much time, so I'm going to just brush up. So EEG tool is like, you use ERP studies. ERP is eventually potential. So we have different brain waves. I'm so sorry. It's a little cloudy here, so the door is banging against it. I'll just be back right now. I'm so sorry. Just a second. Yes, I'm back. Yeah, so the ERP studies is like, I hope you are aware of how the EEG data is collected. I'm not going in detail. We usually use a 64-channel EEG device because we need more data of, the brain waves that are scattered through the skull. Even though it's happening beneath, even though it's happening inside the brain, it's sort of, the ripples sort of come to the skull area, and the EEG electrode picks them up, and these are amplified over and over again until you get a really good signal by cancelling out noise. I also was a participant of EEG study, and you look very funny wearing all those EEG electrodes, and I had a picture of it. I couldn't find it, or it would have been a nice laugh tale. Anyway, so we have different, so my connection might go on and off because we're having a thunderstorm right now. But if I stop, do just ping me, Jaya ma'am, just let me know on my phone and I will get back. Yeah. So we have different brain waves that help you sort of, it changes over time, like when you're awake, when you're sleeping, on and off, and all that. And this changes even when you do a task. So we take a time-specific task, like and we take the brain change, the way it changed from particular channels, and you correlate with when they are not doing a task or when they are doing another task. So basically, EEG studies are correlation studies. You correlate between when they are doing a task versus when they are, sorry, it's t-test. You do t-test, correlation also, when they are doing a normal task versus when they are doing another task that you want them to do. So here we are showing a letter, and they are either wrong or they are correct. And what is the brain changes that is being taken place? So they just have to press a button. We ask them not to move around too much because again, all of that creates noise. Even eye blinks creates noise. So we have 64 channels. Even here, they have channels over here, all over to here. It's very nice. I mean, it's strapping someone to EEG is like getting a nice head massage. I mean, get the person massage. Nothing happens. You just sit there and get 45 minutes of head massage, 10 minutes of experiment, and then you get shampoo, like a nice head another session of, they hair dry your hair and experiment is done. So it's like, research in computer science is all about learning how to deal with participants. It's all about learning to respect them, and that's the majority of it. Everything else is just a small bit of it, and towards the end, it's all about writing writing and communicating. So that is EEG experiments, ERP experiments to be precise, because we are using time-based. ERP is event-related potential. Based on an event, what is the potential that is being produced? The changes in potential. So another study is that just like EEG studies, we have fMRI studies. The fMRI study, and fMRI uses the same anatomical principle as that of MRI, but MRI gives you anatomical structures. It shows you anatomical structures, whereas fMRI shows you functional images. Like when a particular task is being done, or if a hippocampus is, if a memory experiment is being done and the hippocampal area is being lit, then a lot of blood goes to that area. So that image is being delivered. So even then, over there, the person is asked to lie down. I'm not sure if anyone has been in an MRI or an fMRI machine, but it's it's not a very scary experience. It was for me, but it's very loud. But otherwise, completely fine. So you basically you ensure the participant does not hear much. You muffle the noise and everything, and they look up at the mirror, and this mirror shows them the screen, because we cannot take the screen inside. It's magnetic, right? And then the person doesn't move at all. The person just presses yes or no buttons. The patient's completely lying down and just moves their eyes or moves the buttons. That's how we do fMRI data, and then you superimpose when they are doing the experiment versus when they are not doing the experiment, and then you subtract that, and then you will get the image, or when they are doing the experiment you want versus resting state. Resting state is when they are not doing anything. So fMRI studies and EEG studies are sort of very similar in designing. Then we have PMS studies. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we use lesion studies and with stroke patients and brain injury patients. PMS studies is where you temporarily lesion an area. It doesn't do much. Damage. It just temporarily sort of shuts down an area. It actually has therapeutic effects, because there are articles saying that there are therapeutic effects to depression with TMS. TMS is transcranial magnetic stimulation. So with this magnetic area, it's sort of like a tong. You sort of create a magnetic field to lesion that area out, and then the person performs a task before they were lesioned versus after they were lesioned. The area then heals because of plasticity, heals in like 5 minutes or so. Just you feel a little tingling touch, and that's about it. So we have TMS studies also. So these are some of the methodologies in neuroscience, at least, that we use. Apart from that, we also use animal studies. We have learned a lot because of animal studies, especially social behavior because of macaque studies. Even right now, there are monkey labs in NIMHANS, in CBCS, in NBRC. These are some of the places in India that have monkey labs. You learn color with crows and cats. All of attachment studies, if you must have gone through. So they also have animal studies, especially mice. So the reason they use animals is because you can do single cell studies. So people, it's a constant debate even in neuroscience. That you study things as a function or as a single cell. Here, what they do is instead of collecting data from on top of the skull, you collect data from inside. You can even go inside and stimulate the cell. Now, it looks very scary right now, but these rats are treated with the absolute respect and care. They don't feel. I mean, it's like they are treated with a lot of respect. I can assure you that. But it's still too scary for me, so I just cannot. I cannot handle animals. So I don't go into all that. I read about it. So that's about it. So this is how it's done. We already have an electrode placed side and it's connected, and they do certain tasks and press buttons. I mean, these animals learn very fast. Observing my dog, I can tell how very human-like animals are. Humans are not very complicated like we think they are. We can learn a lot from animals also. So those are some of the studies that help understand the brain and the mind in a sense. But how does cognitive science play a role? Is cognitive science is we have three important again pillars that go hand in hand, which is computational modeling, psychological experimenting, and cognitive neuroscience. So ideally, all of them go hand in hand. You should conduct behavioral experiments, you should model this data, and you should check the structural structural framework of all these. So those three things should go hand in hand, and that is an ideal way of studying the mind. Computational modeling, like I mentioned earlier, is like it's the central hypothesis of cognitive science is to understand thinking using representative structures. That is why we have the computer as an analogous model, and you understand the relation between the computational procedures between these representational structures using certain parameters that you get from behavioral data. And with this, you form a theoretical framework. Because without theory, theory without experiments is not really that great, and experiments without theory is blind. So you basically test out the data, behavioral data, intended to be analogous to mental operations. This behavioral data will give you certain ways in which the population behaves in a certain way. So you put them into a logical solution, like a logical operation, and then you simulate these data. So that is what computational modelers do. Most likely, they have their own labs where they collect their own behavioral data, or they take unpublished behavioral data from their colleagues, and then they write theories based on that, and that's how they simulate their data and publish their papers. So everything goes hand in hand, but again, it should be a model cognitive scientist is a far cry. So everyone, even especially in India, it's very new, and yeah, so it's still growing in a sense. So that's what I had to talk about today, and I hope I made it. In 45 minutes, I spoke a lot. I don't know how much y'all understood. I hope this all reached y'all. And that's it from my side. If you have any doubts or you didn't understand anything, please do let me know. And I will be very obliged to answer all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for that engaging and comprehensive talk. It was really fascinating to listen to you. Participants, you can raise your questions, your queries in the chat box, or you could unmute your microphones and speak out.
If you all do not want to ask questions like right now, if there is no time, you can also send me an email on this. You can ask any queries. I've put my email ID down there. You can ask any queries on that. If you have any questions regarding cognitive science or the scope of cognitive science or anything, do let me know. I think Sukanya ma'am has sent some form for you all, so you can also check that out. Apart from that, any feedback, anything that I can learn from, this being my first talk, I hope I didn't bore you all. If anyone have any suggestions that I can improve on, that also is most welcome. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. I made it. Yes, ma'am.
It's from Nice Mary.
Yes, ma'am.
It was very informative class. Within a short time, you have just narrated everything, all the research, everything. It was very nice, and I hope the students may benefit from your. Okay.
I hope so too.
Yeah. They will follow your path, and they will find. They want to study MSc Cognitive Psychology and all later on.
That would be very nice. I hope I inspired someone at least.
Still, congratulations. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I think nobody has any questions for the time being. Thank you, ma'am, once again.
It goes without saying that while I didn't mention Sukanya ma'am and Nice ma'am's name in the beginning, Nice ma'am was one who introduced me to cognitive science, and also, so I was very thankful for that. Nice ma'am. We took cognitive science. She took a paper for me in cognitive science. She taught me psychophysics and all. That has now become my bread and butter.
Thank you. Still, you are remembering my class. It's very good.
I remember everyone's class. I loved Prajyoti so much. Can you give insights about higher education in this area? Yes, certainly. So higher education would be like an MSc. So it's a research degree. So you don't have to do an MPhil itself. And there are courses in India itself. There is Center for Behavior and Cognitive Sciences in Allahabad University. There is a master's program in IIT Kanpur and IIT Gandhinagar. To get into both CBCS and IIT Kanpur, you have to write the CogJet entrance. I think that is in the month of January. And for the January or February, I'm not very sure about that. For IIT Gandhinagar, it's a different case altogether. You have to write a separate interview. You have a separate entrance for that. You'll have to go to Gujarat and you have to go to Gandhinagar and attend the interview and stuff like that. So I wrote the entrance for CBCS before it merged with IIT Gandhinagar. But our professors are like, they keep going from IIT Gandhinagar to CBCS, so it's like sort of here and there. We've gotten a good exposure. The labs are really good, especially in CBCS. We recently got an fMRI lab in CBCS. So for academics alone, CBCS has fMRI building. And that's what I know of in India. Abroad, there are a lot of prospects. PhD in India, there is a lot of prospects too. Like you can do it even in IIIT Hyderabad, and I think in the coming years we will have more centers. I think a Center for Creative Cognition, SR University, will be starting a master's course hopefully in the next 2-3 years. PhD courses are provided in IIT Kanpur, CBCS, and IIT Gandhinagar, and also in NIMHANS. You get to, yeah, so that is there. And you can also study in NIAS and NBRC. PhD's options are available over there. Abroad, there are a lot of people working, even if they are working in psychology, they are like, now they write, they sort of, even they call themselves psychologists, they're sort of cognitive scientists also, because that is there. Work in this is quite, in India, it's very recent. Like right now, we just get as marketing directors and probably like a resource person, mostly research oriented, or an R&D department head or something like that. But abroad, you can have like professorship, you can have your own, yeah, a lot of things you can do. You can, lot of career options, just like psychology, cognitive science, just like that. Career options are just like that. You can also work in artificial intelligence and gaming and all that if you have a degree in cognitive science. A lot of companies now, especially Forbes, a lot of companies right now are actually hiring for cognitive scientists, but people still don't know what cognitive science is in India. So you'll have to migrate, or by the time you all graduate, it will definitely be there. Slowly things are developing quite fast. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. We make a lesion in the brain. It's like a very temporary lesion. It's like, that's what the TMS does. It sort of numbs the area. Yeah, that's what I've studied. Like, just TMS causes like temporary lesion. Temporary lesion studies. Let me just cross-check. It's not a cut. It's definitely not a cut. It is not invasive at all. It's just a magnetic. Let's keep a magnet over here, and you direct the magnet goes into a particular area, and it's sort of like that's all. I'll just show you the paper. It's not invasive. It's very magnetic field, sort of like how can I explain it? It's like laser surgery we have. Like we don't have to chemotherapy, something like that. You have from different ways, but it's not that scary. Like you have it from different ways. You have radiation, but instead of that, it's just magnetic radiation into one particular area for like a few seconds, and they leave it, let it go, and then it heals, immediately heals. The brain is very plastic in that way. So it's very non-invasive. Thank you. Any other questions? So if you have any other questions, you can message me. I think most of you all have my number, or you can email me, or either way I can get back to you with your answers. I'll be very obliged to answer, and I'm so grateful and humbled to speak. I hope I was able to reach out to a few of you all and inspire you all to take cognitive science, because it is a future in psychology. And hope to grow as a family too. I'm so glad to come back and talk, and I thank Jia ma'am from the bottom of my heart for giving me this opportunity. I'm so very grateful for everything. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Participants, please take note of the feedback form link given in the chat box. Please fill it to obtain the e-certificate. Dr. Jaya A.T. ma'am has been the powerhouse behind the successful organization of this webinar, and I gladly welcome Dr. Jaya A.T. ma'am, the organizing secretary, for the vote of thanks.
Respected Manager, Reverend Dr. Father Harshajan Parayatil, Principal Dr. Binu Pichako, HOD Dr. Milo Maria Anto, and all my dear colleagues, then delegates, my dear students. I hope this particular field, cognitive science, is an emerging field, and this webinar was fruitful to you all, especially those who are very much interested in cognitive science and researches associated with this particular field. So first of all, I would like to thank our manager, Reverend Dr. Father Harshajan Parayatil, for his support and encouragement. Then I would like to thank our principal, Dr. Binu Pichako, for his support and help and encouragement. Then today's chief guest and resource person is Miss Crystal Maria Lewis. When I call and invite her, she agreed to do this webinar, and she had explained different type of research methods and experiments in this particular field. And she did it very good way and presentable way. And I am very proud of you, Ms. Crystal. And on behalf of Niketan College and the Department of Psychology, I express sincere gratitude to you, Ms. Crystal. Then I would like to thank her HOD, Dr. Milo Maria Ando, for her support and help, and all my dear colleagues, especially the faculties of the Department of Psychology, Dr. Nice Mary, Dr. Suginya, Dr. Saumya, for their support and help. And then I would like to thank delegates from different other institutions, then all the students, and a word of special appreciation to our technical team, Charlie and Susmi is behind the YouTube live streaming, and Charlie's and everything in the website and all. So thank you, Charlie and Susmi, for your help and support. Then I would like to thank delegates for your participation and expect your wholehearted cooperation in our future endeavors. Then I thank all of you, all my dear students, for their support, and especially Joel Joseph, who is in behind this brochure and all. Bayana, she is behind certificate. So I thank all my dear students for your support and participation. Thank you, one and all. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am, for your kind words. With this, we have come to the end of the webinar. We thank all of us who have joined us today. Thank you once again for joining.
All of you should fill feedback form in order to get e-certificate. Crystal?
Yes, ma'am.